Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrive by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 174, we sit down with Greg Doroski, a lifelong resident of Mattituck and candidate for Suffolk County Legislature in District 1. Greg grew up on the North Fork, steeped in the traditions of our community, and has carried that connection into a life of local service. Before entering politics, he built a career in brewing, learning lessons about leadership, perseverance, and community along the way. He has worn many hats as a business owner, former deacon at the First Presbyterian Church, and Southold Town Councilman, and each role has shaped his approach to public service. In this conversation, we explore his roots, his path into politics, and his vision for the North Fork, from housing and water quality to farmland preservation and growth. So I hope you enjoy episode 174 with Greg Doroski. This episode was recorded September 24th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really great to have you on today.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. I've given some of your episodes a listen, and I think this is a really great public service you do. It's really interesting kind of in the current moment, but also to have the ability to archive this for the future, just as a bit of raw data for future generations to look at. It's pretty interesting.
Yes, thank you. And so in the beginning, I'd like to start off, if you can give a little introduction about yourself, where you were born and raised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my name is Greg Doroski. I currently serve on the Southold Town Board. I was elected there in 2021. I'm currently running for the Suffolk County Legislature in the First Legislative District on the East End. I was born and raised on the East End. Lived for a little while in Laurel, a little while in Cutchogue, but mostly in Mattituck. Mm-hmm. I'm currently living in Mattituck, raising my kids, doing the thing,
Nice.
And I love the East End. I have such fond memories of growing up here. I spent a ton of time in the outdoors. I was an avid fisherman from a young age. Mm-hmm. I was really out there every chance I got fishing. Whether it was in Peconic Bay, fishing for snappers or fluke or anything like that, or also in Mattituck Lake, where I spent most of my childhood. So there, especially when I was, let's say, 10, 11, 12, 13, I was out there every day fishing. And it made a real impact on me. As I think back of some of my earliest memories, they really are in the outdoors. Mm-hmm. Going to the beach, just spending time with my brother and sister and mom at the beach, just enjoying ourselves, enjoying the East End. When I lived in Laurel, our house abutted a potato farm. Mm-hmm. And I remember, the potato bugs coming and then them spraying and all of that. And it was, I think as I look at what people think of in their mind's eye when they think of the North Fork, my childhood really kind of captures a lot of that. The proximity to agriculture, the importance of the outdoors and the environment, fishing, early memories clamming in the creeks and the bays and, eating the fish and, grilling snappers on the grill with my dad and putting the clams on the grill so they open up and then dipping them in butter. It was a really idyllic childhood, riding our bikes around and, then as we got a little older, rollerblading was the big thing. And me and one of my best friends in middle school and high school he lived on Pequash and I lived on New Suffolk Avenue, and we would basically rollerblade from house to house, back and forth, and forth. Either that or ride our bikes. And it was a really great time. Really, really great time.
Very much being outdoors as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. We really, it's funny, from a cultural literacy standpoint, I kind of suffer a little bit because we really didn't watch much television growing up. So really all of my time was spent outdoors, just in nature and enjoying this beautiful place we live. It's a really special place. And I think that experience of the East End and the North Fork really informs my, commitment and priority to protecting what we have. The environment is not just a thing. It's part of who we are. It's part of what defines this place where we're all so fortunate to live.
Yes.
And when you look at the development pressures that are facing us, that really, it's not just trees and water as things that are at risk. It really is our way of life and who we are. Going back, my family, my mom's side of the family goes all the way back to the founding of Southold Town.
Wow.
I guess it's probably 14th great-grandfather was the Reverend John Youngs.
Wow.
And, so we've been here for a long time. So mom's side in the Southold area, and then eventually they moved to Riverhead. And then my dad's side of the family goes back to my great-grandparents coming over from Poland.
Okay.
And they were potato farmers in Riverhead down West Road there, or West. I guess it's West Lane, by old Steeple Church.
Yes.
They were potato farmers and then turkey farmers, and then sold the farm, I guess, in the 60s, and bought a beverage center in Riverhead.
Okay.
That agricultural history, and then the transition away from agriculture in the 60s, I think, is an interesting foreshadowing of some of the pressures that agriculture is facing now, where, they were doing, hundreds of acres of potatoes and cauliflower and really tied into the wholesale market. And their success or failure was really on a razor's edge. And I think ultimately, my great-grandfather and my grandfather and his brothers made the decision that it wasn't worth it anymore. And it was just too much pressure. So I think for me, as I serve as the town board liaison, let's say to the Agricultural Advisory Committee, looking at the importance of supporting the business of agriculture is really ingrained in my family history. My grandfather, and, he passed away 10 years ago. All of his stories are about the farm, whether it was chasing turkeys around to harvest them or being out in the trucks in the fields. And that was his memory of his life. And even though he transitioned out of that was still very much part of who he was. And in the end, he went back and worked at the Long Island Cauliflower Association.
Yes.
He was actually featured in an article in the New York Times.
Wow.
Where they called him the seed man, which was pretty funny. And I have memories as a kid. It's funny, I was out knocking on doors in Riverhead this past weekend, and a guy who works at the Long Island Cauliflower Association lived at the house. And he knew my grandfather, and we were talking about it. And I just have this the clearest recollection of the smell of the back room in the Long Island Cauliflower Association, where he would be there, and then I would go there on Saturdays with him sometime and help him count seeds out. And they'd take seeds from big packs and put them in manila envelopes. And he did a fair number of seed trials at his home garden, which he maintained really through very, very late in his life. So it's the East End is in my blood.
Yes. And did you meant you got to talk with your grandfather that's on your father's side?
Yep.
Did you get to meet any of your other grandparents?
Yeah, so I knew my grandmother, and
Okay.
she, interestingly enough, she died of Parkinson's disease, which they linked to pesticides, actually, exposure. She, growing up, worked in greenhouses, and even when I have memories of her working in greenhouses, and I think just being in that close contact. So she passed away much earlier. She passed away, I guess, in the late 90s, I want to say. And my grandfather lived to much later. And so I have, I definitely have memories of her, but more memories of my grandfather. And, we would typically have him over for Sunday dinner, and he'd kind of hold court and tell stories and sing old Polish songs, which was really funny. And this was kind of near the end. I was fortunate enough to capture a video of him singing a Polish song about the farmer chasing the chicken, catching the chicken. And, it was just really funny. And you could really just see the joy that he had for both his Polish heritage and his agricultural heritage. So that's on my dad's side. On my mom's side, my great-grandfather, Emmett Young, was actually the only person who died in the 1938 hurricane in Southold Town. Wow. They lived right almost going around the bend in Southold there, where you have the Unitarian Universalist Church on the other side of the road. So during the 1938 hurricane, during the eye of the storm, he went up on the chicken coop to try to put the roof back on. And the storm whipped back up again, and it fell over on him and killed him. So my great-grandmother was actually forced to go back to college and become a teacher to support the family. And I have memories of her. She passed away in the early 90s, probably late 80s, 80s, I would say. I was born in 80, so she passed away, probably mid to late 80s. And I definitely have memories of her. I have memories of her house, which... the thing that really struck me, even as a kid, is just how low all the doorways were in the house. Not the typical normal size height doorways. And, even as a kid, I was pretty tall, but my uncles on that side were very tall, and my dad is very tall. So I have memories of them kind of ducking through the house, going around. And then my grandfather passed away on my mom's side. My grandpa, he was a Cushman, passed away in the 90s. And my grandmother, Phoebe Cushman, passed away maybe about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So I have a lot of memories of her. I'm very fortunate to... My grandmother, Cushman, was very, very proud of our family history. And her house had a bunch of, family artifacts and family furniture. And she was, an active member of the Cutchogue, New Suffolk Historical Society, and just very, very active in our local history. And I think she took real pride in our family going back to really the beginning out here. And, I think that was always ingrained in me. And probably really informs my commitment to public service, is just that history that we have out here, that legacy that we have out here, and the responsibility that comes with that to protect it.
Yes, well, definitely. And also just your parents, could you talk about what they did for a living?
Yeah, so my dad was a dentist. He retired a few years ago. He practiced in Riverhead. And My mom was stay at home. They both were very, very active in the church. I grew up in Mattituck Presbyterian Church, and we're just very, very involved. And I guess that's probably the other side of things that really informs my public service, is just really this sense of responsibility to our community, responsibility to our neighbors, and really that being the most important commandment. I guess it's the second most important commandment in the Bible, beyond loving God, is loving your neighbor. And our youth group growing up was very, very active in the community. And we took trips into the city to go to soup kitchens and just really serve the marginalized people in our community. And, I would say one of the more profound experiences I had was, and this was probably 13 or 14, my dad, who's a dentist, was convinced by some of the leaders in Mattituck Presbyterian Church to go on a mission trip to Haiti and do dental work in Haiti. And he was a little hesitant to go, and said to them, I think half jokingly, "Well, if my son will go, I'll go." And right off the bat, I'm like, "Sure, I definitely want to go. That sounds awesome." So just going down there and witnessing just a totally different way of life and a totally different expectation of what life could be. And I still remember, and this is probably one of my most profound memories as a child, of coming home after being in Haiti for 2 weeks the first time, and being able to walk into the house and just turn the light on, and being able to brush my teeth inside the house, because there was no running water. The water that they did have really wasn't safe, so everything had to be bottled water. So even brushing your teeth, you're brushing your teeth with bottled water outside with a toothbrush.
Wow.
And it was just, you talk about a mind-blowing experience. And for me, it really just kind of really shook my world. And I think for me, with that early experience of public service and just seeing how much needed to be done in the world, it really gave me a heart for service, and really opened my eyes to the poverty in the world, the corruption in the world, and the suffering, the very, very real suffering, and just how much we take for granted here, as Americans, but also, as North Forkers who live in really what I believe is the most beautiful place in the world.
No, I think that's important to see that early on, because I think it can be where you, being on the North Fork, you can get isolated and feel that the rest of the country or the world is like this, but then you kind of see that and come back here and even appreciate this more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I kind of joke around with my dad that he maybe regrets that decision, because he's a lifelong Republican.
Oh, okay.
And both my parents are very, very conservative Republicans. Okay. And we kind of joke around that's what made me a Democrat. I also like to joke around on the campaign that, really the reason I'm running for office is it's the only way that I can get them to vote Democrat. But it's good. And we, I think that experience too of growing up in a Republican household and being a lifelong Democrat, and, always being a bit more liberal and a bit more, questioning of received truth, both, in my religious upbringing, but also politically. It taught me the need to really, I think at its core, respect people as people, respect my parents as parents, and be able to maybe compartmentalize our disagreements a little bit better. Okay. Where, and I think we're seeing this today, where it's easy just to write people off as bad because they disagree with us.
Yes.
But if I disagree with my parents, I can't do that. And for me, I feel very, very fortunate to that, for that. even though it maybe is a little bit frustrating when we do disagree, or, I walk in the house and they're listening to Fox News.
You can have a conversation with them and it not get where it's just like, I'm not talking to you anymore or something.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. You need to talk. And I think even their friends, my dad is also an avid hiker, and we go hiking, numerous times a year up in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. And he's currently trying to do all the 4,000-foot peaks there. And I think he has maybe 5 or 6 more. And he's really trying to get it done while he still can. So we go up, I don't know, maybe 3 times a year. And it's a group of guys that go up. Most of them are from the church. And, a few have commented just how refreshing it is to see us over a glass of wine have a very spirited debate about whatever the current event is. But be able to kind of put that behind us and go into dinner and cook dinner together and, really love each other. Yes. And, I think that especially these days is so important and so missing. And I think I think we're the worse for it. So.
Yes. And also I wanted to ask, because you went to Mattituck High School?
Yeah. Yep.
Just if you could talk about your time going through just school in general and going through Mattituck, how that was, and maybe what subject matters you were attracted to.
Yeah, I graduated in Mattituck High School in '99. I have really fond memories of school. My favorite classes were social studies and history and English. I always struggled with math a little bit, and I think so. My brother is an internist, so he's a doctor, and my sister's a dentist. So the question is always, well, why didn't you go into the medical field? I did really kind of struggle with math a bit, and really loved to read. I was an avid reader. I loved history. This is a little bit cringe, but my my claim to fame kind of in high school was I carried the New York Times around with me.
Okay.
And, read the New York Times cover to cover every day.
Wow.
And it a little bit cringe, but I think that love of kind of current events and politics and all of that was there at a very, very early age. So learning about our history, specifically American history, I love it. And I still read about it and learn about it, and had some really, really great teachers there. One that really stands out, or 2 that really stand out to me. One was Mr. Johnson, was U.S. history. He passed away recently. And interestingly enough, his son is actually one of our assistant town attorneys, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Gibbons, who's still around and very kind of engaged as a citizen in climate change, but was the thing that he really pushed on us was memorizing the Bill of Rights and memorizing parts of the Constitution. And, I think that really has served me well. And just that love of our history and love of that heritage that we have, and how that, I think, has been strong enough over time to weather various storms and bring us to where we are now. On the way in, I was listening to a podcast about McCarthyism, Ezra Klein's most recent podcast, and just thinking about how really difficult things got during the Red Scare, and there was legitimate spying going on, or there was raids on people, sending folks back to the Soviet Union. Like, things were not good for a long time. And we were able to kind of pull it back in and move forward together. And then in the late 60s again, where things really, really got heated up and headed in a direction that the public didn't like, but we were able to pull things back together and move forward together. So as challenging as things are right now, I think that historical perspective gives me hope that there is something unique here and there is something worth fighting for here, and that we all have a responsibility to do our part to protect it and strengthen it and leave both this place, but also our country and our economy in a better place than it was for our children.
Yes, well, definitely. But also, coming out of high school, did you know exactly what you wanted to do as a career?
Not really. So I went away to college, and I knew I wanted to study philosophy. Mm-hmm. I have, another profound recollection of reading Albert Camus' The Stranger in 12th grade English class. Mm-hmm. And it really kind of rocked my way. It's only 100 pages.
Yes.
But I read it all the way through, mm-hmm. On a Tuesday night from school, and we were only assigned, let's say, 10 pages. And it just, the kind of depths that it probed in a narrative structure really just blew my mind. And after reading that, I knew I wanted to study philosophy. And, I went away to Drew University and studied philosophy and religious studies with a focus on the Old and New Testament, and toyed with the idea of going to law school, toyed with the idea of going to seminary, which has kind of been a reoccurring theme for me, where I've thought potentially about going to seminary, and decided not to, and ultimately entered into the beer industry, and very grateful for that opportunity that it's afforded me. I think both as a creative person, as someone, I still get a kick out of showing up to work in the morning and having dry barley kernels. And then at the end of the day, there's beer in a tank that's fermenting that in 2 weeks will be beer. Yeah. That's really, really neat. And for me, I've always been very, very mechanically inclined to taking things apart and putting them back together. So that sort of creative side of things with the mechanical side of things has really, I feel very fortunate for that. And then for me, also having the communal side of the beer industry. I think our strength as an industry really is the community. And it's whether it's the various brewers and brewery owners who help each other out. I'm on various text threads with, people that may need a hop variety or yeast or chemicals or whatever that they've run out of, or just the community of consumers itself, bringing people together over a pint, having a conversation, enjoying ourselves. And for me, I've always really, really been a proponent of this idea of beer, where beer is not kind of the center of attention, but really just an accompaniment to coming together in fellowship as a community. So sitting around, having good spirited discussion, debate over a few beers, for me, there's really nothing better than that. And, I feel fortunate to have been in that industry for over 15 years. And, it's given me both the flexibility to do public service on the side and then also continue to work in the industry, which it's been a real blessing. And I don't have any regrets not going to law school or not going to seminary right now. I do really like that kind of practical side of things. I do think at my core I am, I'm a blue collar guy. I like working with my hands. I like lifting heavy things. And I can tell myself, and I have memories. And I even see this with myself now. If I'm not active enough, a certain darkness can descend on me. I still read a lot of theology and philosophy and politics. And I really need that active side of things where I can take my mind off of it and do some hard work and sleep well. If I get too much in my head, it can get a little dark. So, I think that, again, is an area where I feel really drawn to public service. you know, in elected office in particular, in that there's, you know, a lot of ideas you need to contend with, a lot of reports you need to read, look to see what folks are doing in other areas that's working and not working. And there's a lot of just preparation you have to do. But the ability to actually get out there in the community and be with people, talk with people, whether it's at events, whether it's my colleagues on the town board, whether it's our town employees, and actually really be forced to do something, to execute on these ideas. There really is this, at its best, this balance between this kind of contemplative side of things and this active side of things, which I really enjoy. And for me, I feel very, very fortunate to have found elected office because I really, really enjoy it. Even the campaigning of it is a unique opportunity to just interact with all kinds of people. You know, I've started talking about this a little bit more recently, but one thing that's been really, really striking to me is I've been out there knocking on doors on the campaign trail, you know, and I've knocked on 1,600 something doors so far. LD1, you know, includes parts of Wading River, Manorville, Spionk, Remsenburg, a little bit of West Hampton, Flanders, Riverside, all of Riverhead Town, all of Southold Town, Shelter Island. So it's a pretty diverse area, right? And I've been knocking on doors throughout it, knocking on Democrats' doors, Republicans' doors, conservative doors, independent doors, working family party doors, libertarian doors. And out of those 1,600 something doors, I've had maybe 5 or 6 doors shut on me. I've had one guy tell me to get off his property. That's not bad, though.
No.
Most of the conversations I've had are good. Even with folks who I know aren't going to vote for me. You can just sense it in their body language. There is an openness to talk about our love of our community, the real deep down desire to preserve our open space, our farms, our water, the concern for our public safety, the concerns with affordability. And that really is something that is universal. And I think the media these days is really ramping up the heat on things, where you turn on the news some days and they're talking about civil war. But actually out there in the community, I think there's far more that unites us than divides us.
Yes.
And maybe this is one of the blessings of public office, you know, where there is that kind of argument that, you know, show me the difference between the Republican way to pave the road and the Democrat way to pave the road. But I do think now, especially as we are, I think for a long time, local elected officials have been able to avoid some of the national issues. And we've always kind of been told to stay away from the national hot button issues. I think now there's really not that luxury. You know, for instance, you know, immigration enforcement's coming out to Greenport. So we need to deal with that. You know, on the town board, we're police commissioners, and there's no avoiding that. We as police commissioners need to deal with that, need to discuss it. And I've spoken publicly about it a number of times. You know, as I look at the affordable housing issue out here, it's impossible to solve the affordable housing issue on the local level if we don't contend with the crisis of income equality, which is just getting worse in this country. And that's a national issue. As we look at what I believe is a real threat to our healthcare system by this new budget bill, it is going to impact our hospitals. Certain elected officials say it just impacts the lazy folks who are in their parents' basement, you know, able-bodied people that don't want to work. But folks are going to go to our hospitals. It's a question of who's going to pay for it. And will the hospitals be left footing the bill? And will all of our premiums just keep increasing? And we're all going to have to bear that burden. And we as a nation need to deal with this healthcare crisis. I believe healthcare is a human right, and we need to, on a national level, address that. I think we need to address this income inequality. It's just getting worse.
Yes.
And as you look at the divisions in this country and plot that along with income inequality, I don't want to say it's causal, but there is definitely a connection there. So for me as a local public servant, elected official, I have definitely started to engage in the national discussion a little bit more because I don't think we can avoid it. And I think we really need to ask ourselves some hard questions and really need to start addressing these issues and really provide an opportunity for folks to achieve the American dream. That's what brought my great-grandparents on my dad's side here and my mom's parents going back to the 1640s. And if you look at, I recently reread John Winthrop's A Model of Christian Charity. That's where that city upon a hill phrase comes from.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. And once you get through kind of the old English, it takes a while to get into it. But it really talks about this idea of charity and unity and togetherness as a symbol for the world. And when you see how divided we've become, at least on a national level, I do, again, think there's far more unity as we get down into regular people. We're squandering our inheritance if we're allowing this division to foment. And it's that city upon a hill is not only a benefit for the people that are in that city, and it says this in that essay, but it's a beacon of hope for the world. I think we all need to work together to regain that status as a beacon of hope. And, it's something I'm very committed to as a public servant. It is a struggle because I think there are, on a policy level, disagreements. And it's hard to, I think it's hard for folks sometimes to separate policy disagreements with personal disagreements. And there's always a fine line of balancing what's a personal attack and what is a legitimate issue of public concern. And it's something, I'm contending with personally in my race right now, where I have started going after my opponent pretty strongly on a number of issues that I see that I think deserve discussion. But it's also being sure, starting in my own heart, that I respect her as a person, as a fellow child of God, as someone who is just trying her best. And I think we all really need to look inward first and then kind of move outward and have the ability to move back and forth between disagreement and agreement and being able to respect each other as humans, but really still disagree with each other and have hearty debate. As I look at the importance of debate in this country, it really is baked into our DNA. Even in the 3 co-equal branches of government, part of that structure was set up so Congress could be this spirited place of debate. The Senate was a little bit slower. The executive was supposed to be, and I guess this is my interpretation, was just supposed to be more concerned with the running of things. And then you had the judiciary there as the ultimate kind of check on the legality. But there was this space, a safe space for debate, really spirited debate that, sometimes, broke out in duels, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. But I wanted to also just ask, as you mentioned, you do a lot of different things, whether working within the beer industry, a deacon at the First Presbyterian Church.
Yeah, I'm no longer a deacon there. I was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And basically the way it works, and this is, I think, some really good stuff within Presbyterian, they call it polity, but that's the rules, is you need to go on boards and then come off boards. So you just don't have a permanent leadership class that's developed.
Okay.
And I think, you and I could probably do a whole podcast on my my thoughts on both Protestant and Presbyterian as a branch of that, the impact on the government in this country and the structures and the importance of reason and this and that. But we can put that aside.
Yeah. But just going into, I was curious what made you decide to run for town board a few years ago?
Yeah. So actually before that, in 2019, I ran for town supervisor.
Okay.
Yeah. And I lost by 117 votes or 1.2%. That was my first race. What got me really involved with it, and this is kind of my origin story, and I'll try to keep it quick. I had opened a brewery with some partners in Brooklyn, and the plan was to always open a satellite production facility on the North Fork so I could come back and live here, raise my kids here, and this is where I knew I wanted to be. So 3 years into the project in Brooklyn, came out here, found a parcel, found a developer who was going to do a build-to-suit thing, and it was zoned industrial, which, to my mind was an area where we wanted to put breweries. Had early meetings with the town. They were very supportive of it. And it seemed like over time, they became less and less supportive of the project. About halfway through, they wanted to slap on some covenants and restrictions that would have prohibited us from doing retail tasting room forever. They originally wanted us to guarantee that there would be no truck traffic on Oregon Road, which we didn't think we could really do, like as a practical matter, even if we wanted to. And it really opened my eyes, I think, to this idea how our town code was very, very outdated. As I really started digging into things on the code level, on the policy level, I saw that the town had been working to update their comprehensive plan for 10 years, and it still wasn't adopted. I saw that the zoning code hadn't been updated since the late 80s. And in my role as a owner and brewmaster at my brewery, I had the opportunity to travel around the country and see places like Asheville, see places like San Diego, see places like, in upstate New York or Vermont or Maine, who had really embraced the artisan manufacturing movement. And this was bakeries, breweries, vineyards, people that had seen that folks desired these products, and it was a good opportunity to grow the economy for small businesses. This was a good opportunity to really create new mom and pop businesses that could support a family, could support a few employees, give the community a place to gather. And it seemed like a mutually beneficial situation. Now, in the town's defense, around the time we were going through the planning process, there was that terrible limousine accident where those girls were killed as the limousine was T-boned. So there was definitely a certain amount of resistance to the alcohol industry at the time. And so I got kind of frustrated. I got up at a few town board meetings. I wrote a few op-eds in the Suffolk Times. And interestingly enough, some Republicans approached me and said, "Hey, you should come to the Republican Club meeting, and we'd like to introduce you to some folks and do that." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not a Republican." And then I actually, funny enough, went to school from grade school on with the Southold Democrat Party chair, Catherine Casey Quigley. I was very, very good friends with her brother. We actually all played on a CYO basketball team together that her dad coached. And we didn't have enough players at a few games. So Catherine actually jumped on the court, which was funny because, this was probably, I would say, when we were 13 or 14 and boys are kind of out of control. It's funny. If you ever get her on, you should definitely ask her about her experience of playing CYO basketball on the boys team, because she has some funny stories. But she actually approached me about running for town assessor. I was like, no, I don't want to run for assessor. I want to run for supervisor. And, I think initially folks were like, well, you don't have any political experience. It's like, well, I opened a small business with 50 employees valued at $6 million. Like, I have executive experience. I've gone through the planning process in Southold. I know what the process looks like. So I started in 2019 as a very, I think, long shot candidate. Who is this guy? To getting really, really close to winning. And so that really set me up both in dealing with the issues, and in the time the town did adopt the comprehensive plan, and then really set up the campaign in 2021 of just the importance of focusing on implementing the comprehensive plan through a zoning code update. And I really kind of pushed that hard. And during my tenure on the board, have been very, very engaged in that. For the first 2 years, I was the town board liaison to the zoning code update committee. And then when Supervisor Krupski was elected, he jumped on. And, as the board liaison to the Agricultural Advisory Committee and the Economic Development Committee, took a really, really active role in looking at the code for agriculture and really making sure that we are writing code for the future of agriculture. Just with the idea that if we want to support agriculture, you got to support the business of agriculture. Some folks think farming is just a view. It's got to be a business. Otherwise, farmers won't do it. And I saw that with my great-grandfather, where he gave up on farming because the business just wasn't working the way he needed it to. And, I think some of the things that we have in the draft, the first draft of the code are really, really good. We've definitely been pushing to do more. And I'm excited about the public input. We've hosted almost 20 input sessions as a town board. I think I've only missed 2 of them. So just really to have the opportunity. And I think this is something really that speaks to my sense of public service, where it's not just the elected officials and the town officials delivering proclamations forward. It really needs to be an exchange of ideas.
Yes.
So we brought in the business community to talk about their concerns and their needs. We brought in the agricultural community to talk about their needs and their concerns. We brought in the wine industry to talk about their concerns. We met with all of the hamlets individually to talk about their concerns, and really had the opportunity to have a dialogue, because this really is, it needs to be a community document that we work on together.
No, definitely. And as you mentioned, you're running for Suffolk County Legislature. What made now the right time to step forward into the county level?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. And something I've really said to people, it doesn't reflect any negativity on my time on the town board. I really, really love the work we're doing there. And it wasn't an easy decision, but it really crystallized in my mind, a conversation I was having with Al Krupski. We were sitting having coffee one day, looking over the bay next to one of our town parks, as we do sometimes, and just talking about, the challenges we're facing as a town, the challenges the region are facing, reflecting on the work that he did on the legislature. And what I saw at the time is a real void in the leadership that he provided when he was on the legislature and I was on the town board. And Al was very, very active as a legislator in the town, supporting the town. So when there was county grant money there, Al would come to the town board and say, hey guys, this is the opportunity. This is what you need to do. If there was a housing proposal that Al did not agree with, he would come to a town board meeting, public hearing, and speak out against it to let us know his concerns. When we saw Proposition 2 pass, I guess it's going on 2 years now, and created the Water Quality Improvement Fund, that is a case where I know that Al Krupski would have met with the town in January to say, hey, this is a $4 billion pot of money that everyone's in competition for, all of Suffolk County. This is what you need to do to put yourself in the best place to do that. Our current legislator was totally absent. Our current legislator, until I started calling her out on the campaign trail about it, had not been to a single Southold Town board meeting. And, that is what it is. We all have our own leadership styles. Mm-hmm. But when I look at the role of county government, it really is to support the towns in what they want to do and help marshal the resources to do that, right? And I think there have been some fights over recently. So for instance, when there was a hotel in Southold that I'm not going to name because they've sent us paperwork that we can't keep calling them out on an IDA tax abatement. Mm-hmm. Where, throughout the planning process, they were saying, this is a need. We have our funding in place, blah, 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 blah. And then we caught wind that they submitted an application to the Suffolk IDA for a tax abatement. So they wouldn't need to pay school taxes. They wouldn't need to pay fire department taxes. We got up and fought against it. My opponent was totally absent from that public discussion. When Riverhead Town floated that crazy idea to do an ag tourism district up on Sound Avenue, we got up and spoke against it. She was absent. And she started, I've started calling her out on it, and she's like, oh, well, I had private conversations with the supervisor, and that's ultimately what decided. But part of serving in elected office for me is being out there in the public discussion. Mm-hmm. So folks know where you stand, and we can all have this public dialogue, sometimes debate, but dialogue together. As we look at the Suffolk County Water Authority proposal to take water from Flanders in Southampton Town, pumping it through Riverhead to Southold, it's something that we've been actively pushing the Suffolk County Water Authority on, to include the town of Southold, the town of Riverhead, and the town of Southampton as active partners in this, mm-hmm. and not just kind of what we see as going through the formality of public engagement, so they can just kind of move forward with their theory of, the divine right of the Suffolk County Water Authority and manifest destiny that this is their water that they're going to deliver. My opponent hasn't said a word publicly about it. We both attended a forum together. The only thing she said was she got up defensively to clarify that initially she said the Suffolk County Legislature only appointed one member of the Suffolk County Water Authority Board, but then she got up to clarify that it was actually 5 of the members that were there, but never stated a position, never got up there in public and said, hey, Suffolk County Water Authority. And I think this is a perfect issue, right? Because it spans Southampton Town, Riverhead Town, and Southold Town, mm-hmm. where there's competing interests, competing costs and benefits, and really a place where you need a leader there to act as a bridge.
Yes.
And to be a bridge, you need to be an active participant. You need to be out there in the community. You need to be out there at the public hearings. You need to be up there at the podium. And I get it. Some people are not as comfortable speaking up at the podium. But we need, for me at least, I think the community benefits when we have leaders up there that are actively and publicly advocating for the community. Mm-hmm. And we see this with Legislator Krupski, former Legislator Krupski's tenure on the board, on the legislature. I've come to see it with current legislator Ann Welker's tenure on the board. She is very, very actively engaged with things in the town, and not just during campaign season, and not just when they're being called out for not being there. And, don't get me wrong. I don't think my opponent is a bad person. I just have a different concept of public service. I have a different concept of leadership where you need to be a bridge builder, and that requires active engagement.
Yes. And you mentioned water quality and preserving farmland and housing affordability, but what do you think is the most pressing issue now for the District 1 or even just the east end of Long Island here?
Well, I can tell you, as I've been out there knocking on doors, the environment is top of the list for folks. And this is, whether I'm in Wading River or Manorville or downtown Riverhead. And I had that sense because it was really important to me. And again, looking at former legislator Krupski's tenure, environment was really the start and the finish of what he kind of did there.
Yes.
He did other good stuff. I'm being somewhat hyperbolic, but it really is. That's folks want to preserve what we have. Folks recognize just the profound gift that this place is. And it really is. It's our open space. It's our farms. It's our water. And that's our groundwater. That's our surface water. And that is also our way of life here, right? So it's small businesses. It's places where, I guess thinking back a little bit, and I was thinking about this as you were talking about high school a little bit. I think there was much more economic diversity when I grew up. My dad was a dentist. My best friend's dad was a corrections officer. Another friend's dad was a painter, like a house painter. Another one was a carpenter. Another one was a nurse. So you can think about it, and we all lived together in the same community. We all had that opportunity. And, what our parents didn't really impact, our ability to do the activities together, interact with each other, build relationships. It seems like we're losing that opportunity now where regular folks are getting priced out. Median home price, depending upon who you ask in Southold Town, is almost $1 million. What kind of job? What kind of job can you work on the North Fork and make that? There's not many.
No.
So this is where, and this is something I pressed on a bunch when I was running for supervisor. We really need to broaden our sense of community preservation. And I think this is one of the reasons that I lobbied so hard to pass the Community Housing Fund. It really, early on, the supervisor at the time, Supervisor Russell, was dead set against it. Our town attorney at the time was dead set against it. And I really had to fight to, first off, meet with then Assembly Member Thiel, who had sponsored the legislation, and work with him to outline what we actually needed to do. And then I really advocated to get it done, and we did end up passing it. We did end up as a board supporting the effort to move that forward. And I think that linking of land preservation and housing preservation together really recognizes an important broadening of the sense of what community is. I think we've done a really, really good job since the Community Preservation Fund that preserves land, that, transfer tax. We've done a really good job in Southold Town of preserving land. We've preserved 10,000 acres Purchase development rights, open space, etc. We've really, really struggled to create community housing. I think everyone looks at the cottages in Mattituck as the kind of ideal case. And I am proud to be behind a project that we're pushing forward in Peconic on Carroll Ave, where I worked with the town attorney's office, again, with significant opposition from then Supervisor Russell, to put together a request for proposal for a developer to do a project similar to the cottages there. But really, so to have that funding in place is vital. And because we both as a town board worked to pass the community housing fund, but then the public supported it by a wide margin, we have $3 million in the bank now. But for housing, that's not a ton of money. When you look at cost per square footage between $300 or $400 per square foot to build affordable housing, it's not going to build a ton of housing. And I think this is where my experience working with multiple layers of government, working with our state representatives, working with the county representatives, and really marshaling together resources, right? Being that bridge builder. Because, to do affordable housing out here, we need to work with the Suffolk County Health Department because we're not on sewer. These systems are very, very expensive. So we need to work with the county on getting grant funding. We need to work with the state on getting funding, both for land preservation and also housing. And I think it really benefits the public when you have an elected official who's really out there engaged in the community and really has a personal sense of this. I'm a working class guy. I know what it means. I see what's happening to my grocery bill. I see what's happening to my fuel bill. And it's creating real pressure. And I think that experience really strengthens my resolve to address these issues. And I think, as we look at it, a lot of these issues that we're facing here are not unique to the North Fork. Look at affordable housing. It is a national crisis.
Yes.
But the solution to solve our issue on the North Fork needs to be a local solution. It's not something that we can build our way out of. Otherwise, we lose the North Fork, right? If we build 10,000 units out here, we've increased our density by 50%.
And it loses everything that people love about it.
Absolutely. And we don't want to do that, right? And, we see this, sometimes traffic engineers are like, oh, well, you need to widen the road. And we, whether it's, highways or small roads, if you create a wider road, more cars will go on it.
Yeah.
And the traffic just gets filled up.
Yes.
And I think as we look at some of our concerns, right, with the Suffolk County Water Authority, it's that our current demand is between 2 and 3 million gallons. This pipeline provides 8 million gallons. Yes, zoning is a local issue and we can control development, but similar to when you widen the road, people will find a way to use that extra water in this case or roadway in that case. And I think this is where, at least on the water issue, we need to be really, really concerned with conservation. And that's why I'm really proud of the water conservation measures the town board just passed, restricting, lawn irrigation, residential lawn irrigation. When you look at that of the water the Suffolk County Water Authority pumps in the summer, 70% is for residential lawns.
Yes.
50% of that is wasted. So as we talk about the need for water, I'd much rather focus our attention on preserving the water that's in the aquifer. This idea that we can just build our way with deeper wells, our groundwater is a limited supply. And especially if we're coupling it with sewers, right? And this is another thing that we've seen in other areas. So it's like, all right, we're going to have public water and then sewers, and then those sewers discharge into the salt water. We're not recharging our aquifer. So if all of the water that the Suffolk County Water Authority, let's say, is pumping now, 3 million gallons, goes through a sewage treatment plant and then goes out in the bay, that's not going back into the aquifer.
Yes.
So we're losing that limited resource. And I think this is where, as we look at, and I wouldn't say we're opposed to what the Suffolk County Water Authority is doing. We're opposed to them not engaging the towns as a legitimate partner. And really both as a planning partner, but also as a partner in conservation, and looking at what measures we can implement together to actually make water conservation a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because even if they put the pipeline in to give us 8 million gallons, we need to conserve that water. Mm-hmm. It's not, this is a typical tragedy of the commons where this is a public resource, a public good that people will just consume indefinitely. This is where we really need government to come in and help manage this, right? Mm-hmm. Help manage this limited resource, because it is a public good that's there for everyone.
Yeah, I think people just take it for granted.
Yeah, you turn the faucet on. It's like me coming back from Haiti that time,
yeah,
and the ability to go into the bathroom and just turn the faucet on and brush my teeth indoors.
Mm-hmm.
Before I had that experience of going outside where I needed to use my bottle of water to wet my toothbrush and brush my teeth, it's like, where does water come from? It comes from the faucet. Mm-hmm. No, actually, there's more to that that's involved. Mm-hmm. And, this is where we really do need, towns to come in and help. The water authority is really, really good at delivering water, but that's their sole function. In philosophy class, one of the early kind of models you learn or illustrations you learn is it's the paperclip factory, where if you program something just to create paper clips, it seems like a good idea. But if they take all the resources from the world to create paper clips, we're just going to have paper clips. And if someone tries to intervene and their sole function is to create paper clips, they're going to get rid of that person. You really need to balance. Yeah, we need paper clips. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need water. But how much water? Where are we getting it from? How can we be smart about it? And I think this is where, elected officials really need to come in.
Yes. And do you worry about the East End, even the North Fork, as you mentioned, with housing, just with the demographics changing and maybe it becoming more of a retirement community out here, and there aren't as many job opportunities, and maybe a lot of people have to commute from further west? Do you worry about, as with the school systems maybe getting smaller, and like you said, we're doing a good job at preserving the land, but are we doing a good job at keeping people out here, people that grew up out here? Yeah,
no, it's a struggle, and frankly, I don't think we're doing a good enough job. You look at the class sizes in school, they're shrinking, right?
Yeah.
You look at membership in the fire departments, they're shrinking. You look at membership to churches and other nonprofit organizations, they're shrinking. And it's not just retirees, it's second homeowners. And, my experience of going to Mattituck School, where there was economic diversity, where we could all live together, we are really losing that opportunity here. And that's not only weakens the community, that not only weakens our heritage here, but it's also a profound public safety issue. When the fire department doesn't have enough people, which then turns into an economic issue. If we need to move to paid firefighters out here, like some of the fire departments have moved to with paid EMS,
yes,
what does that do to our taxes? They just go up. We have these big school buildings. What happens there? I really have to give Mattituck Superintendent Sean Petretti some credit here. He's already started studying what consolidation looks like. Because if this trend continues, it's not going to be a choice. we're going to need to consolidate our school districts. And we, for a lot of these problems, and I think this is where proactive leadership is really, really important. Whether it's dealing with the impacts of climate change out here or any number of issues that we can see on the horizon, we need to address them now. The time to address what's going to happen when we get the next big storm out here is now.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The time to address what we're doing with sea level rise is now. And we're doing some of that work, mapping the low-lying areas and meeting with our state and county representatives to talk about raising vital infrastructure. But schools are another issue. Fire departments are another issue. And this is where, the housing thing, and again, it's not just a place for young people to live. It's for all people to live. Mm-hmm. It also would give the opportunity, and we see this all the time, where, mom and dad, most Americans, their largest asset is their home. So they're retiring. They have some kids that are either living with them now or would like to buy their house. They can't afford it. So I think this is a place where the construction of accessory apartments is really, really useful. And something I really want to focus on in terms of funding from the county is funding the construction of accessory apartments. So when mom and dad want to downsize, they can move into the apartment. Kids can move into the home and pay them rent. So then they have money. Mm-hmm. And then when the time comes, they can inherit the home, and then they also have an apartment. I was out there knocking on doors yesterday in Mattituck and speaking to a lady who was going through the accessory apartment construction process. Mm-hmm. For her, it wasn't only the desire to provide housing for the community. It was to offset her expenses. It's to have that other revenue stream to help offset the tax increases, the cost of living increases, which we just know are there. Mm-hmm. And, it's a real challenge. You talk about taxes. When our healthcare expenses for the town go up 18% a year, how do you contend with that? And that, again, is where these national issues that maybe in the past we've had the luxury to avoid, we can't avoid them now. Mm-hmm. Those healthcare increases are directly tied to national healthcare policy. And it's having real implications on our budget in the town and the people of our town.
Yes. No, it definitely affects everyone at the local level. I think people might say, are we limited in how we can respond as a town or within the Suffolk County, how we can address it on the local level, or can we really address it on a local level, or we just can't rely on the federal level?
Yeah. Well, and I think we're seeing that now, mm-hmm. With federal funding cuts, mm-hmm. This idea that we could do X, Y, or Z project and we would get it funded through, let's say, a community development block grant, mm-hmm. which is funded through HUD. Not having the certainty of that funding stream is concerning and will have very real impacts on the community. And I think this is, when you see this in the business world, you can either kind of have a scarcity mindset where you're trying to really kind of protect your dollars the most you can, mm-hmm. where you're kind of in this decline phase, or have a growth mindset where you want to build and really kind of grow, mm-hmm. right? I'm definitely of the mindset that I would like, and I think technology offers us a huge opportunity to really grow the economy. The question needs to be, and this for me is how we allocate those resources, just so income inequality doesn't get even worse. But I do think there's a real opportunity to improve everyone's quality of life. Mm-hmm. I think the problem right now is both this scarcity mindset, where it's kind of, I think it's a misnomer that only one party is concerned with eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. None of us want waste, fraud, and abuse. Mm-hmm. It's really, what are our priorities? And then how do we efficiently spend that money? But this slash and burn mentality where we're gutting vital federal agencies that provide real oversight on public health, mm-hmm. on, public well-being, is really concerning to me, because it really impacts the people that are really struggling the most, that don't have the luxury to have their concierge doctor who just shows up to their house when they're sick. I think for me, this is one of those things that really helps motivate me to serve the public and engage in the issues and do whatever small part I can. Whether it's practically in putting together policies like, putting together the RFP for that Carroll Ave community housing project, or fighting on the larger scale to actually pass the proposition to allow us to collect those funds, or have these sort of discussions, even talking about kind of the multifaceted nature of that.
Yes.
And again, I think this is where this kind of public discussion becomes really, really important and necessary from our elected officials. And, I think now more than ever, it's vital that we have these sort of discussions.
Yes. No, and I think I had one other question.
Shoot. I can keep going. I think you have that sense.
Yeah. Just for the North Fork, when you imagine the North Fork for your kids or future generations, they'll inherit the area. What do you hope it looks like, and what role do you hope your work plays in shaping the future?
Well, yeah, for me, I think I'm an optimist here. And I think, supporting that sort of childhood that I had in the legislation that we passed, in the preservation efforts, is vital. And that's vital to my work as a public official and to my work as a parent, and also my work as a community leader, and just really kind of being out there as an advocate for these things. I think looking around, it's very easy to be pessimistic. I know, when you talk about the traffic issues, let's say, that are one of the challenges of a tourism-based economy. It's easy to look at the South Fork and say, oh, this is what we're going to become, and just kind of throw up our hands and admit defeat. I'm not willing to throw up my hands and admit defeat, and that's why I'm engaged in this. I would not be engaged with it if I thought the ship was lost. I think we're in a good position to keep preserving this community and making it easier for my kids to stay here, my parents to stay here, and for me to stay here. And I think, so I am very optimistic about it. But I think we need to kind of come at this eyes wide open and, not just accept that we need to, sell the North Fork to the highest bidder, and really push back on this idea of, yes, I am a proud capitalist, but we also need to protect the public good. We also need to protect what is ours, right? And what is ours specifically in Southold Town starts with what's defined in the Andros patent, where these common lands around our water is ours. This groundwater in this aquifer is ours. This open space is ours. This community is ours. And that's really what we need to protect. This idea that it's mine because I have more money than you, or it's mine because I'm a public benefit corp like the Suffolk County Water Authority. It's not the Suffolk County Water Authority's water. It's our water. And we need to protect it like it's ours.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I usually just like to give people the opportunity, if there are any last minute things you'd like to say or discuss, or just share to our listeners as they go into election time.
I think the most important thing, especially in local elections where turnout tends to be quite a bit lower than national elections, and especially now when you look at national politics being the mess it is, that really get engaged in the local issues. Whether you vote for me or don't, at least make that a conscious decision Just don't vote the party line because I have a D next to my name and my opponent has an R next to my name.
Yes.
Look at the differences. Look at the differences between our town board candidates and their town board candidates. Our highway superintendent and their highway superintendent. Trustees and trustees. There are differences. And I think it's vital for all of us. We all have that responsibility as people who care about this area. Mm-hmm. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to read up on the issues, engage in the issues, and participate. And I think for me, that's another thing. Just as my knocking on doors has been very uplifting to me to see just how there is more that unites us than divides us, I think seeing the level of public engagement with the zoning code update has been very heartening. Sometimes, former town board member Jim Denizio would always post a picture of the budget hearings that we would have. And these are like $40, $50 million budgets. Mm-hmm. Typically, there would be no one there. And yes. He, posted it as kind of a criticism of the public, I think. But looking at the amount of engagement that we've had in something like zoning.
Yes.
When I ran for supervisor and I was really, really focused on zoning, every single expert that I would talk to said, stop talking about zoning. No one knows what you're talking about. The B zone versus the LB zone, bulk schedules, all of this kind of nitty gritty stuff. But just to see how people have spent the time to acquaint themselves with both the current code and then the recommendations and also what they'd like to see has been really, really great. And, I would just really call on folks to, please come out and vote, and please reach out and speak to us. Even if ultimately you're not going to vote for me, I'd love the opportunity to have a discussion, to hear your story, to hear why you think my idea on XYZ is bad. Mm-hmm. Maybe your idea is better. But the only way that I'm going to learn that is if we actually have a discussion together. And I think those opportunities are becoming fewer and far between, and something I've really tried to foster in my time on the town board.
Yes, definitely. No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on today and share your story and your continued involvement on the town level and being a voice for the community out here. So thank you so much for coming on.
I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate this work you're doing. As I said, as we were talking about before, I listen to a lot of podcasts and, a lot of public radio and, looking at projects like StoryCorps and The Moth and all of those things that really focus on giving regular people the opportunity to tell their story. It's our stories that makes us uniquely human.
Yes.
And I think the work that you're doing here is a vital part of that project, both for us currently, that I can tell my story now, but also so future generations really have an opportunity where the family history is actually recorded in some place where people can go to. Mm-hmm. And it's not trying to figure out, what gravestones were here and that there and, all of that, which is a fun pastime for folks, but also a challenge. So,
yes. No,
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. All right.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 174 with Greg Doroski. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.